Andrew Tate is a dark, maybe even evil, marketing genius because he has the ability to tap into something called the collective unconscious. Let me explain. In the film No Country for Old Men, the unstoppable assassin Anton Chigurh confronts another assassin, Carson Wells. Wells knows he's about to die at Chigurh's hands, and the scene is an iconic display of two master actors. But one line stands out. Chigurh smirks as he rhetorically asks Wells a simple question that calls into doubt the character's entire worldview. If the rule you followed brought you to this, of what use was the rule? If you can understand this scene and this question, you can understand why I think Andrew Tate is a marketing genius. Andrew Tate says some horrible, disgusting things about women, and about other people, and about a lot of things. But I still think he is, in marketing terms, brilliant. And you don't have to like him, but you should understand him, because for better or worse, him and his style of virality is the future. Andrew Tate on the surface looks like a standard male lifestyle guru whose marketing consists of, I have a desirable lifestyle and you can have it too if you buy my product. This paradigm has been done to death by guys like Tai Lopez and Grant Cardone. But Andrew understands something, that this generation of men need something else. See, unlike Tai Lopez selling courses a decade ago, today's young men don't want a bigger house or a nicer car. Today's men are at a spiritual low. Tate understands not just marketing, but is able to speak to today's young men on a spiritual level by understanding their Jungian needs. Let me explain. Today's young men in the West look incredibly different from many past generations. The average age of marriage for a man is 30 years old, and that means most men go about 40% of their lives unmarried. For a few decades, the sexual revolution meant that the rising age of marriage didn't itself mean a life devoid of connection. From the 80s to about the early 2000s, 85% of men and women had at least one sexual partner in any given year. But in the early 2000s, both sexes reported a sudden decrease in sex, and it was much worse for men. Now about 28% of men are sexless in a given year, and if you look at heterosexual men only, that number rises to 32%, so almost 1 in 3. Now this isn't a conversation about male sexlessness or incels. This is illustrating what I think is a larger trend, where a huge number of men feel isolated entirely from society and connection, social connection. Friendship among males has also declined incredibly. In 1990, only about 3% of men reported that they had no friends. For the number to be that low, even men with serious social, physical, or cognitive impairments would still have to report having at least one good friend. Now, in 2019, the earliest year we have data for, 15% of men report no close friends at all. That means 1 in 8 men today have no social network of any kind. Finally, today, men are also economically crushed. A man of today earns less than a man in 1980, accounting for inflation. But earnings isn't everything. See, while American men are earning the same as they always have, they're being crushed by debt like never before. Since 2000, American household debt has been rising exponentially. And remember, since 2000, the average number of households that are just single guys in their apartments has been increasing. The average car loan, for example, is $26,000. The average credit card balance, $13,000. The average student loan balance is $30,000. So a typical male with a car loan, student loan, and a credit card makes about $36,000 a year before taxes and is $70,000 in debt. So if you're one of these guys, you might look in the mirror and ask yourself, how did this happen? After all, society, teachers, college recruiters, your parents, late-night talk show hosts, the news, the president, Congress, your boss, all explicitly or implicitly said the exact same thing, that you need to go to college, get a good job, put your nose to the grindstone, don't be loud, don't make waves, don't be weird, don't make people uncomfortable. And you can go wild in college, but only if wild means getting blackout drunk 4 nights a week. Any other ideas are problematic. And I can tell you personally that when I went to college, my parents probably spent years encouraging me and strategizing for how to be competitive in college, but when I actually went, I didn't know how to cook. I don't mean I don't know how to cook well. I mean I had to read carefully the directions on the package of spaghetti to understand what to do with it. I was given no other skills other than being competitive for college. And your reward for doing things the right way is crushing debt, crushing loneliness, and a lifetime of isolation. Joseph Campbell is a writer and professor of literature who drew extensively from Jung and talks about the hero's journey or the monomyth. Don't worry, we're going to get to Tate in a second. The journey is a framework for understanding myths across human cultures and in turn understanding how we see our own lives. One such character in the monomyth is the wounded king or the fisher king. In myth, the wounded king is grievously wounded in the thigh and groin, and his ability to continue his lineage and move about the kingdom are stripped from him. The kingdom begins to fall apart around him. Crops fail, lawlessness and infighting grows, since the king is physically unable to get up from his throne and lead his kingdom. Not only that, but he's literally unable to give the kingdom a future due to his wounded genitals. For many men, they might feel like the Fisher King. They're nominally in charge of their lives, but trapped in a dead-end job and shackled to their debts, they're powerless as they grow older and their lives trend downward. In tarot, the Wounded King is most closely associated with card 12, the Hanged Man. But as you can see in the card, the Hanged Man is trapped. He's not dead. To free himself, he has to see the world completely upside down. And like the Wounded King, the only way to save the personal redemption and to save the kingdom is through a complete change in how he views the world. And Andrew Tate understands this. See, in Campbell's hero's journey, the kingdom can be saved, but only by the hero who's called to adventure. However, in the myth, when the hero first receives the call, he refuses, and it's important to understand why. According to Campbell, quote, refusal of the summons converts the adventure into its negative. Walled in boredom, hard work, or culture, the subject loses the power of significant affirmative action, becomes a victim to be saved. All he can do is create new problems for himself and await the gradual approach of his disintegration. And this is where Tate comes in. Tate understands this population, this subset of modern men, feel like wounded kings, and they're waiting their call to adventure, to go on their hero's journey, to revitalize their lives. But he understands that the call to start this journey needs to feel like too much. It needs to be refused at first. Tate puts his most controversial opinions front and center because first and foremost, he needs men to realize the journey he's offering them is far outside the comfort zone, far outside of the conventional, socially approved thinking that led them into their current state. His values have to look almost completely upside down. Tate understands that the only way men will have faith in the process is if it will upend their lives, and it has to feel like it's going to put them in a mirror universe in terms of values. Tate is a legitimate kickboxer, and he understands that the only way to achieve greatness in fighting is to accept a fight against opponents that are going to push your skills to their limits. Not impossible fights, but fights where your first instinct might be to say no. And each fight looks like a hero's journey, at least at the competitive level. So Tate knows exactly what it should feel like. He knows that as a fighter, the fights that will grow you as a competitor should excite and terrify you in equal measure. Tate wants the young men who watch his content to find his own worldview exciting and terrifying in equal parts. Tate, in the hero's journey, is framing himself as the supernatural guide, a larger-than-life figure aiding the hero on their journey, giving them the tools they need to succeed. Do you see how it makes sense that he sells a vehicle for learning how to make money online? He guides them, but he cannot walk the journey with them. In tarot, he would be represented by the Magician card. He shows the hero the tools that they must use to navigate their journey, but cannot walk it with them. Now, I don't think Tate necessarily needs to have read Campbell or Jung to understand these archetypes. The whole point of them is that they exist as kind of ancient memes buried in the collective unconscious. However, Tate is much smarter than he lets on, I think, and I wouldn't be shocked if he actually read some Campbell. Now, this isn't an endorsement of Tate. It's not even an endorsement of his product. There's a lot about him that make him seem like he might be a snake oil salesman, and his misogyny isn't entirely an act, I suspect. However, his marketing strategy, where he doesn't just navigate controversy, but he actively creates it, is a look at our future. More and more creators, politicians, and influencers are going to lean into controversies to polarize their audience and make them believe they're on some sort of parasocial hero's journey along with the creator or even with the product. But Campbell would tell you that the journey isn't about a product. It's not a money-making venture. It's about growing within yourself and gaining the skills and perspective you need to save your kingdom, right? It's about raising the people around you up, about giving them something that they are unable to give themselves. It's about other people. So in the final accounting, I think Tate begs the same question that MHGR does of Wells. Tate's call to adventure to young men is simple. If the rules you followed led you to this, of what use was the rule? Subscribe.